Oh, really boiled more water in the kitchen on the right. Okay, welcome everybody. Good morning. Dilgo Rinpoche and Khenpo and Anila. So, yeah, we are very happy that Khenchen Rinpoche is here again. He was teaching a couple of times on Jamyang Khyentse texts and also on Lama Chötsang at some point in another location, but it was the same center. Yeah, and we are very grateful and thankful and very honored that Rinpoche is back here again today, together with his one and only marvelous translator, Khenpo Tsöndrü, and the very joyful, uplifting Anila. So, thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and yeah, please teach us.
Chuso Didam, Yang Chuso Digi, Hinlaju, the Walla Penny, Kenbuchi, Kachu non Yures, in Dalayan, Mazukindichi, Kenbuchi, Chuso Della, Yang Pegi, Koga Pinde, Sambuji, Kalwa Sambuji, Chunson, Sini, Kenbuchi, Dewa Penny, Ni Tuzutan or Cutting Chase, Ni Manzodi, Tarin Kajuti, Longchenpa, Shadamji. Ni Khenpo Suataris, Kuni Samana Yasen Arches, and Khenpo Carso Kachiti, Uzunam Tigdos, and the Chuju Denshavra, Digital Khenpo. Chuju Denshav, the Nindijala Khenpo Sunsinara. So we'll do the refuge prayer. Sanye Chodan Suri Chonam Chanchu Dani So Dani Chunye Gibe Sona Dola Benje Sanye Lora Shu Sanye Chodan Suri Chonam Chanchu Pardu Dani Kesu Dani Chunye Gibe Sona Dola Benje Sanye Lora Chanjo Badu Dani Kesuji Dani Chunye Gibe Sona Dola Benji Sanje Duwa Shu Senje Tamje Dewa Dangele Yudan Dewa Dunga Da Dunga Ki Yudan Dewa Yuji Dunga Nebe Dewa Dawa Dani Dewa Chata Lila Neve Danyo La Neva Yuji Sashi Peshi Shushi Frera Leche Nile Gembani Sanye Shindo Nege Dewa Dobe Nanda Shila Cheva Shodam Guru Rana Mandala Buddha Mega Samoda Savarana Samaya Senje Nandi Samba Loe Cheda Cheda Wa Chejo Temo Deba Cheje Holo Kodo Su Gudu Jika Cheje Adela Manu Gujada Yedru Ejo Layla Jidu Angana Meduna Guzada Guju Lamano de Doa Joji and this magical and Savi Lame Javadu and the Dawson Royal Jura Jura. The children within the digital Majiva Consa and the church. Somebody wants on the Chi like the Brother, Tamjaki the children to Georgie. I am not in the Lions and in the St. John. Tibet choose the La Sonto to the Chevy to what young Mrs. Lama Chötsang Once again, it's such a great pleasure to be here and to be here gathered together, to have this opportunity to think and to listen and to contemplate over the teachings of the Mahayana, the great vehicle. And taking this opportunity, I would like to wish you all a very meaningful life ahead. The great master Shantideva pointed out that this human existence with freedom and advantages is so difficult to find. And when we have found this, if we do not make the best use of it, we will never know that we will have this opportunity again. So, as you know that in the teachings it is explained that this human existence is so hard to find, so difficult to find. And the reason why it is difficult to find can be understood in three ways in terms of causes and condition. What brings about human existence? The cause in itself, as pointed out by the great master Chandrakirti, that why we are born in the human realm, in the higher rebirth, is because of having practiced morality, having practiced the ethical discipline of abstaining from 10 non-virtuous actions and engaging in virtuous actions. And therefore, in terms of cause and condition also, like how difficult it is to remain in that kind of ethical discipline, how difficult it is to practice. So having practiced this in our past life, it has brought about this present human existence with freedom and advantages. In terms of metaphor or examples or analogies that you find in the sutras talking about how difficult it is to find the human existence, you know. And in terms of numerical comparison, if you compare in terms of population with other forms of life, including hungry ghost realm, animal realm, and hell being, and it is so difficult, like it is so rare in terms of finding this precious human existence with freedom and advantages. So when we have found this, it is in our best interest to make the best use of it, because we need to understand the potential, its potential, because humans have intelligence that actually kind of differentiates them from animals, than from other forms of life who actually lack this discerning kind of wisdom that can distinguish what is good and what is bad in short term and in long term. So therefore, it is very important that we make the best use of this precious human existence and do not waste it or squander it, because we never know whether we will have this opportunity again or not. So when it comes to how to make the best use of it, is to be responsible for our own actions, our body, speech and mind. Because if we kind of like engage in actions that are negative, that are unwholesome, that are non-virtuous, it can drive us into the lower rebirths. It can drive us into the suffering in samsara in general, and particularly in the three lower realms of existence, which actually deprives us of this opportunity to really practice Dharma and to walk the path of liberation and enlightenment. So keep this in mind and try to make the best use of it. Because at the end of the day, no matter how kind of like, how much of, you know, material prosperity, worldly good things we might have, particularly in the West, which is so much kind of the whole of the society being directed to materialistic development. There's abundance in terms of food, in terms of clothing, in terms of dwelling, in terms of anything that we consider good in life. You know, there's a lot of abundance there. But at the end of the day, when we pass away from this world, what we can take? We can't take anything. The wealth, the status, the position, all the things that we consider good in this life has to be left behind. And what actually kind of follows us will be our actions, the actions that we have committed in this life, body, speech and mind. If we have engaged in virtuous actions, if we have engaged in wholesome actions, then definitely it will lead us to higher rebirth, which will actually kind of enable us to walk the path of liberation and enlightenment. And that is what we call the long-term benefit of engaging in the Dharma. So keep this in mind and try to put your best foot forward in using this human existence in a productive way for your own benefit. Even though we have found this precious human existence with freedom and advantages, which is very precious, which is like the wish-fulfilling jewel, which has a lot of potential. However, it is very short-lived. As you know, when Shakyamuni Buddha appeared in this world, beings kind of tend to live for 100 years. And then the lifespan of human beings actually receded after a long time, and it can recede up to like humans that can live only for 10 years. And that too is because of the exhaustion of merit of sentient beings. And once the beings actually, again, instead of engaging in non-virtue and not engaging in virtue, if we do the opposite and engage in virtue, abstain from non-virtuous actions, then the lifespan again kind of increases, and they can live up to 100 years and more. So that all of this actually depends upon one's own action, one's own merit. And merit is, when we talk about merit, it is none other than one's own action, the positive actions. And when we engage in positive actions, it will lead us to higher rebirths, fortunate circumstances, where causes and conditions to practice Dharma are abundant. And if we engage in non-virtuous actions, then that will lead us into the unfortunate realms. So therefore, understanding this, how the karma works, how the action, our action works, how it brings about the result, and what actually is actually the story of the samsara, how samsara comes about. And samsara is none other than our own making. We just can't blame everything for others, because we are very much we contribute a lot in what we experience now, what we will experience in the future. And therefore, knowing this, the interrelationship, the interconnectedness between our actions and the consequence of what we experience, what we have experienced in the past, what we are experiencing now, and in the future. So it's in our best interest to kind of make the right choice, and stay out of trouble, try to engage in virtuous actions, so that we create the right circumstance of this, having this precious opportunity to practice Dharma and to walk the path of liberation and enlightenment. So therefore, that is one thing. And as we know that as long as we have this self-cherishing attitude in our hearts and in our minds, we are bound to kind of come again and again in samsara, because that's the root cause of samsara. Because self-clinging, from self-clinging arises the negative emotions, and from negative emotions, the negative actions, and from negative actions, suffering and pain. Whereas if we kind of minimize, and if we kind of give up, if we kind of eradicate, and if we kind of work on our self-grasping, self-clinging, then we kind of somehow work on the root cause of samsara, and there is a hope for liberation and enlightenment, of course. And therefore, on top of it, being responsible for our own action, for our own benefit, and on top of it, reaching out to others, having the space for to benefit others, to have this Mahayana attitude of bodhicitta, the altruistic attitude, where we kind of think of the benefit of sentient beings. Why should we think of the benefit of sentient beings? Is for our own sake, for our own benefit. And particularly we have, since beginningless time, we have crossed path with each other. Because from beginningless time we have wandered in samsara. And at some point we have made a connection with all sentient beings in one way, one form, one way or the other. So therefore, during those times, they have benefited us a lot, just like the parents and loved ones of this life. In the same way, sentient beings have benefited us, and it's kind of high time to repay their kindness. In what way we repay their kindness is to guide them onto the path of liberation and enlightenment. And in order to do that, we must achieve what we call the supreme awakening, the state of Buddhahood. And that is what we call the aspiration of bodhicitta, the Mahayana attitude, the vast intention, where we kind of open our heart and open our mind and have space for all sentient beings, embrace all sentient beings, and wish kind of all the good things, particularly the ultimate happiness for others. So to have this attitude, is the main important point in having received so many teaching, and particularly the Mahayana teaching. So we are really fortunate that in this kind of life we have met with the Dharma, we have met with spiritual teachers who guide us. We receive so much of instructions, important instructions, precious instructions of Mahayana, and therefore at the best what we can do is to achieve enlightenment in one lifetime. If not, at least we make sure that we kind of like create the right causes and conditions that we achieve enlightenment in the near future. And that is that all depends upon our own attitude, our own mindset, our own motivation, because everything is in the mind, you know, whether we call it virtuous, non-virtuous, neutral, whatever it is, all is nothing but the expression of the mind. So therefore, and we only have one mind and we can take care of it, you know, we need to direct that into something positive. So keep this in mind and, you know, then listen to the teaching. So the teaching that you are going to receive, the text is called A Mirror Revealing the Crucial Points, Advice on the Ultimate Meaning. Now, composed by the Ordination Longchenpa. Now, in terms of what the Buddha taught and what the great masters who came after Buddha, how they commentated on his teachings, sutras and tantras. So in terms of varieties of teachings, like it is like huge, like so many varieties of teachings, different levels of teachings, and so on and so forth. So we don't have much time actually to study everything, you know. So I think in order for the practitioners actually to kind of really understand what is actually the essential meaning of what the Buddha taught, how can one actually essentially kind of understand what Buddha taught and how to put them into practice. And for that, Longchenpa composed this. And because we don't have time, even if we have time, we don't have the capacity to really understand everything, study and contemplate and meditate upon everything. So therefore, for that purpose, Longchenpa wrote this. So therefore, the Tibetan word here, dampa. Dampa actually is like a mengak, which is pit instruction. And what is the function of pit instruction is it is short, concise, and it is convenient and easy to understand, and also like easy to convenient to practice. But it's very powerful. It's not just easy to practice, but the power of the teachings, you know, the efficiency of the teaching is so great. So that's why it's a menga. And just as you know, the analogy here used is a mirror. When we look at the mirror, then you will see what our face appears. You know, what are the wrinkles? You know, if there are any kind of flaws in it, we can really see it. What are the good things, what are the bad things, and so forth. We can see it very clearly, right? So in the same way, when we look at this text, then we'll really come to know what actually we need to practice, what we need to focus on, what is the essential point. So, and that too on the ultimate meaning. So Longchenpa starts with a prayer actually of homage to his glorious master, root teacher, who actually paying homage in a way that one remembers the qualities of one's root master. So single embodiment of the compassion, power and activity of the infinite mandalas of victorious Buddhas beyond measure. So one's guru is the single embodiment of compassion, power and activity of all the Buddhas, the mandalas of victorious Buddhas beyond measure. And this glorious Lama, the glorious master, who is actually the supreme sovereign lord of 100 Buddha families. So 100 Buddha families essentially embodied in one's guru. And that guru actually is the one who bestows upon oneself the ripening empowerment and initiation that ripens one's mind, and then explain the tantras, the meaning of the tantras, and then gives reading transmission, the pit instructions. So in three ways, one's glorious master is kind to oneself. So that glorious master is the Buddha in person. And at your feet, now and forever, I pay homage. So remembering the qualities of one's glorious master, Longchenpa pays homage.
Pema Sherab Rinpoche, Kagyu Dudjom Rinpoche, Kagyu Dudjom Rinpoche, Nyuanshi Chökyi Lodrö, Sannoji Watawa, Nyuanshi Chökyi Lodrö, Pema Kagyu Dudjom Rinpoche, Shedra, Shedra, Nyuanshi Chökyi Lodrö. Nyami kana tao karshirisam. Ogo noms, nano soshibita. Ogo no talin, tari kapsoji. Tawa jinjuwa chodo miru bunzo to. Teje je tamba Rinpoche to njara tiba chibo. Chiso teje de tiba mi ba chibo dun chiba to tiba chibo. Iba chiba de teje duwa ni da tu. Shivalaswa. Tiba chumule chiba doing pub chiba, no details or jiva shiva. Or that the Tiba champion. Temba as a car is done, a long time or talk time I need. A long time but the new was no soon. No Tiba champion they knew. Talk with them at the Labas, children Lava to take into Shedra Lava, this motor, talk with them. Tempa Rinpoche 아주 고가 좋아요. 아니 루틴도 다음주 추진도 주게 론에 여기 뒤인들을 그래서 제발 좀 해봐도 시비손 다음주 손을 도나 손도 고가요. 세븐 네발로 줄라서 권을 건도진 존한데 여기 뒤인들을 마치하다 미스 동제 세지 몽을 미스 동제도 마소와로 세도 미스 동마스 비트한테 내가 짠 매일제니 미스 동제 그자만 최드로만 담주 추진 용례도 때니 후할 때는 타기로 좀 많이 비 거기서 던제는 미스 동제 차지 있어서 대답 미스 동제도 마소와로 갈고에서든 땡지 누마 용타바 제사로 소도다 땡지 누마 타바 양대 고모 땡지 누마 마음바나 로니 타니서 소다 건디와 타바지도 로니 요청 코드 지와를 보여지 대소도 독수만 타입 산지 마르데 또 손예사를 거니 저도 든도와 땡지 누마 용타바 손도 주고레스 나저 체제 브라도 니소 톱소는 독고산 전전 예술을 찾아 몇세 통째 따뜻이도 말아서 몇세 통째 좋아지 거기 찾아 몇세 세 통째거든 롱도 수수한 담아시 수수한 또 투그로 빼나 보건나고 가서 로드 제 시위나 공부를 되기도 뭐라도 달라서 들리지도 시출로 대 시위나 딱 가서 가르쳐 미세 공부 미소시 루이가 찬스 조도 저 독도 당자 당제 로 집어 저 루이도 도저지야로 가게면 그 주인지로 아주 되레지 미세 세이 몽글 됐어 내가 레드면 로그도 손을 돈 전시 수 다시 돈 제니 다디 봐 로가서리 아주 미소 자사 제니 가서 님면다 체면이 제니 지라세지 가서 미세 세이 셔다 이거 어떤 데리들 땅안 좀 거니 실체는 팬도 주도 갑주 자 제가 심한人소소 메시를 쏜다 맞으나 땅에서 라차서 가기 좀 와서 세인데 이니와 좋은데 가서 좀 심지어 통지요 때문에 그 로그 집어지고 륜도 도저지 알마도 팬도 가면 다 들리는 거 내대거든 손을 돈 좀 론데 서로서 줄 손을 또 하고 두고도 대든 미스 도제 맞아봐 맞아봐 땡지 누마스 땡지 누마데 타반양데 고모도 누가 손을 돈이 며칠 초에나 땡도 주소 추이 년에시니 시간 받아도 지사나서 보다 제국이 좀 년에시나 딱 땡도만 놓서 줄 다음에 단도 좋아요 대 많이 시제는 가서 땡도마도 땡나 손도 시고 있어
Emma, fortunate yogins, listen now. Emma is a Tibetan expression for wonder. Fortunate yogins, listen now, without distraction. We have gained a perfect human form with its freedom and advantages. As explained before, we have met the precious teachings of the Mahayana. So, precious teachings of the Mahayana is, amongst what the Buddha taught regarding the foundational vehicle or the Hinayana and the Mahayana, and what actually Mahayana teachings stands out from the foundational teaching is because of its 7 qualities as mentioned in the Sutra Alankara, the text called Sutra Alankara. And the 7 qualities are great object of focus, great practice, great wisdom, great diligence, great skill in means, great perfect accomplishment, and great enlightened activity. So these 7 qualities actually makes Mahayana teachings much more profound and superior in terms of its scope, in terms of its view, in terms of its meditation, its conduct and fruition. So we are so lucky that we have met these precious teachings of Mahayana. And we have the freedom to practice the sacred Dharma authentically. We have the freedom to practice the sacred Dharma authentically. Now when it comes to Dharma, in Tibetan we say Tempa. Tempa here refers to the teachings. And the teachings here refer to twofold. One is the scriptural teachings, which refers to the three Pitaka, the Sutra Pitaka, the Vinaya Pitaka, and the Abhidhamma Pitaka, which actually includes the body, the whole body of what Buddha taught. That's scriptural teachings. And then the second one is the teaching of realization, which refers to the experiential level of what we actually engage in. Like we engage in the practice of ethical discipline, which is the Shila, and then we engage in the meditative concentration, and we engage in the generation of wisdom, and that actually is what we call the teaching of realization. Teaching of realization is something that we experience, that we kind of manifest those teachings in our mind streams. So at this time, let us not waste our lives in meaningless pursuits, but work towards the genuine lasting goal. The genuine lasting goal referring to liberation from samsara, which is the end to all the suffering in samsara, the cycle of birth and death, ending this vicious cycle, the chain of birth and death that we have experienced so far, and we will experience until and unless we cut the root of samsara. And then the supreme awakening, the state of supreme enlightenment. So we need to work towards this genuine lasting goal, and we should not waste our lives in meaningless pursuit. So meaningless pursuit refers to all the activities, which are directed to the outcome or the result or the success or whatever you may call it in samsaric life, worldly activities. It can be the achievement of wealth, prosperity, status, name and fame, and so forth. So these are actually very ephemeral. These are short-lived. These we cannot actually kind of take along with us at the moment of death and beyond death. What we take along with us is our karma, is our action, is our practice, which actually follows us and which actually leads us onto the path of liberation and enlightenment. So therefore, we always need to know that no matter how successful we are in this life, no matter how much we have achieved in this life in terms of samsaric goodness, prosperity, as mentioned before, we don't have the power to take anything with us when we pass away from this life. We have to leave aside this precious body that we kind of that we are so much attached to. Even that also we have to leave aside. We can't take with us our friends, our wealth, our position, our power, our name and fame. Everything needs to be left behind. Nothing actually can be, we don't have the power to take along with us. So therefore, from this we come to know why should we waste? Like we can think of ourselves that from the moment of birth till now, how much we have worked hard, day and night, in the daytime we are too busy working. In the nighttime we kind of like, we are deprived of sleep because of trying to achieve what we need to achieve in this life. And for what? Ultimately we have to leave aside all of this, everything behind. And since kind of, since there's no essence, there's no meaning in terms of what we achieve in this life, it's high time that we focus our mind in the pursuit of the ultimate goal, that is liberation and enlightenment.
건조 예배티와 가족들에서 먼저 탁티발라서 대주제금 용서가 또 하나 도마선소는 처비 딱 가지고 대주 프로젝트선을 또 하나 대부분 순자사 요대로 다 제비세존 자치 대주지 다는데 요나 다지 지금 용내시 많이 나왔어 요나 다지 뭐데 돈제 자치고 요이 다지 용내 내지니 다들 공이 심하 타와져도 론이 봐도 지무고 지금 저러면 누가 동아 용내지 매나 다 돈이면 용내 맞나 요지 책 리원 어떻게 리원 무사하면 모르고 요종 제가 팽이와 가시 제가 신문을 또 이어야 되는 보통 무사하면 로즈의 내용 책중화 조직 가게 제가 100만원 가시 최우시자 그 칠도 소미치자 그 단주로지 제대 단서는 용용 수어제대 저도 시지에 대 밤에 치종 여장 연난 단다 추동을 저롱 주dim 나도 다들 이제 롱주도 마선 롱주 추도 마트나 롱주도 추도 저는 남연이 또 거니 연애시고 단다 롱주 추도 마트나 냐면 저도 메트로치 냐면 저도 더차 쳐도 또 들어와 대니 나오니 간디 뗄때 단다 냐면 저도 다 통해서 간디 간디 마고마 또 되시도 론이 처럼 도면 그만 정식 리사르다 마음과는 그만 타변 총그가 왜 있어든 어떤 영업에 좋은 저쪽 말해서 다 대도 데이터가 거기서 이제 대 최저는 대비 찾아서 제종 그거면 조대면 그 교회지로나 성선 논의 마도나 동강을 롱 예종 초기면 너가서 그저에 관해서 어떤 이제 원주 세대를 로는 제저 원제 요령 난 밀좀 주세요 말씀 저저 던지는 나오는 거 거야매 너가 또 말이야 때도 난지를 어디 싫어하는 탈두고 있어 때는 초시들 민중치
There are infinite categories of teaching and countless other ways to enter the vehicles. Now, in terms of what we need to practice, what we need to know in terms of what the Buddha taught, the teaching, they are so vast, there are so many, so much of varieties are there. We talk about 9 yanas. The 3 outer yanas leading from the origin, which talks about the vehicular teachings meant for the Shravakas, the hearers, Pratyeka Buddhas, the solitary realizers, and for the Bodhisattvas. Then we have the 3 yanas of Vedic asceticism, which refers to the 3 outer classes of Tantra, Kriya, Charya, and Yoga. And then we have 3 yanas of powerful transformative methods, which refers to the 3 inner classes of Tantra, the Mahayoga, Anuyoga, and Atiyoga, from the Nyingma perspective. Now, in terms of each of these 9 yanas, how we enter this path, how we enter this vehicle, what is the view, what is the meditation, what is the conduct, what is the fruition. So each and every 9 yanas has these respective aspects or qualities that we need to know, so we can understand. Of course, there are infinite categories of teaching and countless are the ways to enter the vehicles. Explanations can involve a great many words and expressions. Now, if you try to explain each and every level of teachings, that can lead to so many words and expressions. Unless we can take to heart the essence of the genuine meaning, then even committing many hundreds of thousands of volumes to memory will not decidedly bring benefit at the moment of death. So now Longchenpa speaks about, in terms of knowledge, even if you have extensive knowledge of all the varieties of teachings, their entry points, their view, meditation, conduct, and fruition, and even if you have this in memory, all these aspects of teachings, in terms of volumes of teachings, you can think of the Kanjur and Tenjur, the translated words of Buddha, which amounts to over 100 volumes, and Tenjur, which is actually the translated words of the masters, which amounts to over 200 volumes. And we put aside all the sungbums, the teachings of each and every masters within the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So infinite, they are infinite. And even if you have this knowledge of all of these, if we fail to understand what is the essential meaning of these teachings, and then, at the moment of death, this knowledge won't help us. Seemingly, we might have boundless knowledge, all derived from study and reflection. But if our fundamental character is not attuned to the Dharma, we will not tame the enemy, the destructive emotions. So knowledge on the one side, it goes to one kind of, way. And whereas our fundamental character, our emotions, negative emotions, which are rooted in self-grasping, they remain unaffected. They remain as kind of like strong as usual, as normally. And then that actually doesn't really help us at the moment of death. So what is the fundamental character that we actually need to attune to the Dharma is to work on our self-grasping, which is the root cause of samsara. The self-grasping leading to negative emotions, the kleshas, and those leading to negative actions, and that leads to suffering and pain in samsara. So that actually happens through the wisdom that we develop through what we call knowing the selfless nature of individuals, selfless nature of phenomena, and meditating upon it and practicing it so that the self-grasping is uprooted. Unless we limit our desires from within by adopting an attitude of not needing anything at all, then even mastery over 1,000 worlds will bring no real satisfaction. So here Longchenpa talks in kind of speaks in terms of how we should live a contented life, a life which is kind of not ruled by desire, but of kind of like contentment. And the contentment, actually, the feeling is that we don't need anything at all. It means to say that the bare minimum, what we need to survive, that's all. We don't need more than that. And when the limit of desire is there, then only we have the luxury and the kind of time to practice Dharma. And if we don't limit our desires, even if we have mastery over 1,000 worlds, even if we possess and achieve and obtain the kind of prosperities of the 1,000 world, even then our desire will not be kind of controlled. There won't be any satisfaction.
So good.
Rangyu chöda madu nyungu dhawme jikyang gome gi lona nane madu na tongkam rawa yunga choshe mi jong se tibat sas namji chane se din.
Ta dini ta kar goyo se dun ka che je dun dikye chö ji chö je chö me so yi je tani chö je cha so ina chö ba to to ka je non ja je de chi ji ngeme gun non 참에 그때 손에서 쉬고 수시에 대인이도 전지자 손나지 아주 로드 지와면서 와서니 시초조 이러면서 손이 서버저 대도 저가 요마 대는 non 참에지 나니 자기 맞이나 로니 체테니 제가 긍이 시작 긍이다 추지 갈패 그서는 제가 배 지금 제가 저 두고로 그다 긍이 저 뭐로 네 저는 로니가 또 돈이 다음에 고모고 저 대다 맞으나요 거의 동안 때는데 답이 신고로서 요사 지원해 이거 답이 신고 내가 지어서 집에 벌로서 왔더니 어떻게 되지 무료. 얘네 롱근 도시 사가지고 있으면 롱그 쩌는데 너샤치도 좀 너샤 군노 시동도 뜸군 소리. 사실 tam지 롱절. 대롱 유메도 롱그 좀 돈도 그러면도 예생이 용말 롱 도시. 나한테 처루도 좀다라. 소소이나요. 예, 인자가 매매 저들 건데도 노담에 지어서 단통 좀 통진 요거 인지를 있었는데 단통 쇼매도 마저나 나 니마 봐요. 나 접시 봐요. 나 찾아지 모르시는 로도다 차 제도 텔메기 선들 고자디 차도 제때 티베트에 추면 제저 말했어. 그래서 저거 콘좀 로아지 토이스는 선고 도근 산제 담제 저라 도마메 바디 많이 준다 제수 저라도 사이 도면 좋아하는 거지 마치 찾아 이든 저랑만도 많이 로모시는 찾아 마지 바디 직접 매비 통제단 니제 전수산 지 니제 전수산지 산지 뒤준체 매봐 이제 선참 이제 매비 고니 조금 그런 산지 통제전 마음 넘어다고 맞았나 도만 망었다 대고 놓은 매비는 이제 내가 이제 저 좋아시거든 로체면 가서 저 도면에 가지고 가지 건설도 뒤톱지 이제 다 주고 로치비도 손도 대셔 이제 개무 tom지 원긴 이제 때가 문제
Should we fail to prepare for the uncertainty of the time of death, we will not accomplish the great purpose, that which we will surely need when we die. Here Longchenpa points about the preparation in terms of what actually looms large before us is the death. Death can happen any moment, any time. There is no certainty. So uncertainty of life, unpredictability of death. That is so important for practitioners to keep in mind, because if we are always kind of ready, like if we always are mindful of that, then we will always be prepared for that moment, the moment of death. Because in the teaching it is mentioned that tomorrow or next life, which one will come first, we never know. So therefore, instead of preparing for tomorrow's life, we have to prepare for death. So therefore, the mindfulness of death, mindfulness of the uncertainty of life, the mindfulness of the unpredictability of death is so important for practitioners to keep this in mind, so that we will prepare for that moment when we die. So what actually helps us at the moment of death, the fearlessness at the moment of death is when we are alive, if we practice the views, the great views of the Mahamudra, Dzogchen Chenpo, or the great Madhyamika, then if we have practiced enough, at the moment of death we will be able to abide in that state, abide in that view. If not, then there are also like practices like POA, like emergency exit, as like an emergency exit, which actually help us to kind of transfer our consciousness into the pure realm. So these are how we kind of prepare for the death. And if we are well prepared for death, then our life has been meaningful. Our life has been well lived, and we have practiced well. If we don't overcome our own faults and train in impartial, pure perception, then having attachment and aversion will prevent us entering the ranks of Mahayana. So the overcoming the one's fault. When it comes to overcoming one's faults and failings, it is we ourselves, we need to work on it, because we know what are our faults, what we best know, like what are our limitations. And in terms of working on those limitations, we have to work hard. Nobody will work for us to overcome those faults. So therefore, as a practitioner, we need to overcome our own faults and train in impartial, pure perception here, in terms of like, even if we are kind of if we have entered the path, and if we are like part and we belong to a particular tradition in terms of practice, in terms of study, in terms of lineage, if we think that, oh, I'm a Nyingmapa, or I'm a Dzogchenpa, or I'm like Chakchenpa, which is a Mahamudra practitioner, and so forth, and then we look down upon other traditions, then it's like what we call, we become partial, and that will lead us, that will what we call, in that way we develop what we call impure perception. So we should be impartial in terms of the various tradition, like respect. There should be respect to all the traditions. If we are able to study and practice them, know about them, and it's good. If not, at least we should not kind of comment. We should not judge, because we really don't know what is there. So therefore, it's very important that that we develop what we call tolerance, and we develop pure perception for other tradition practitioners and so forth. If we develop attachment to one's own kind of tradition and lineage and aversion to others, then we kind of like, it will prevent us from entering the ranks of Mahayana. Unless we make pure prayers of aspiration with unceasing compassion and bodhicitta, in the knowledge that there is not a single being among the 3 realms or the 6 classes who has not been our mother or father in the past, we will not unlock the treasury of altruism. If we always think of ourselves, I, me, myself, I, me, mine, if we give so much importance of these things, and if we block our kind of like thought and emotions and care and kindness to others, all other sentient beings, then we won't be able to unlock the treasury of altruism that is actually within us. We have the potential to reach out to others, we have the potential to benefit others, and we have the potential to embrace all beings. And if we always close our mind and only think of ourselves, being too selfish, then we will fail to unlock the treasury of altruism. Unless we have such devotion for our kind teachers that we consider them as greater than the Buddha, we will not receive even a single portion of their blessings. So in this regard, the great Kagyu master, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, he kind of said that our devotion is like the sunshine. If you don't kind of give rise to that sunshine of devotion upon the mountain, snow mountain or the four kayas, which is actually embodied in one's own teacher, if you don't shine this sun of devotion, the stream of blessing, which actually comes from the melting of the snow, will not happen. So therefore, it's very important that we always develop devotion, faith and confidence and trust in one's own teachers, kind teachers, who are actually even greater than the Buddha in terms of their kindness. Without genuinely receiving blessings, if we fail to receive their blessings, then the tender shoots of experience and realization will not grow. So experience and realization will only grow through the blessings, and blessings happen through devotion. And when we receive blessings, then what happens is whatever we study in terms of scriptural teachings, all the aspects of the teachings, we kind of like understand them as what we call advice, understand them as hard advice for us, which actually directly speaks to us, and we can relate to them in terms of practice. If realization does not dawn from within, dry explanations and theoretical understanding will not bring the fruit of awakening. So spiritual experience and realization, when it arises from within, then it actually enable us to really kind of reach the heights of realization. We walk actually the path of liberation and enlightenment. And if that realization doesn't happen, then even if we have like a lot of knowledge, as we mentioned before also, like dry explanation, theoretical understanding, conceptual understanding, in terms of that, no matter how efficient we might have, no matter how in-depth understanding we might have, all are just conceptual, and they will not actually bring about the fruit of awakening.
Tanda kache komboje koyuzu seni ide choje debi takada yodebi kake bejo maso tade ronji choje debi ronji choje suda don toji te maina te ta chuba zuma chagdo zuni segdo zuni toji de choje guba chugmaris cho meyon ta de dana ronji maji badon Kobi Shaja Tongji Yong Duan. Tsezo Tsuwan Hazu Zong Deni. Roni Tsirapa Chebi, Nirma Suwa Dentz, Zavashiajin, Tsuwan, Seizu, Togo Mazuba Zoji. Girl, Flava Tona, Suwa Joa Zong Deni. Jin said to Doji Parola Suwan Zubi, Nono Jumu, the Uja Gube, Tonti. 야건조 추바 망면으로 지마는 또 주비 하다는 사저존의 때에 단지 금에다 섬 그거에서 뭐저 사즈 손도 매빈 나와요 노 푼르사이 시바서 손 뭐저다 주바 이비 세노든 로저다고 자도 다 하고 도르 또 주바께서지 너무 짜지버려서는 로저 먹었다고 자대는 다 갈고 차살. 단지 금에는 참에도 동통이 되지 그거서. 아니 어디서 좋아하는데 제대로 좋은 자로 또 몰랐으면 차지 뭐뭐 시야 이때는 그 로니 그 나데 혼자 라면 넣어 봐. 그건 라면 넣어 코나 거니 트로트가 그거 줘야지. 라면 넣어 거지. Lama so zai da tang. Wrong gezo chara, dia kang sa sa jeje tamje. Pama sanje to chara tome da ba ma tumo je sanje tonje ge don do mei se de huo jia gu. Jo huo no. Ja sa tama su se ge. Zo sanje de ngi me to ji huo tama se tama su se su ma zhen chu de yong da ban ru. Sanje da mei. Roni 가데 내가 남 요새는 지고 주나다 두고 주나다 레고 주나다 니바니 지쇼용 라미 투지 검선 메들 땡이 더 쇼저 동제동 라미 투지 때 사람만도 레미게 와서다 된 제브 조도 제브도 로타 팬데 메들 추바다 강한 매브 시켜자마 누가뭐 최초 내가 땡이 빠져도 너무 뭐 용을 대초에 사람만도 디바미게 Lei Huswatani, Lami Tujiti, then James was saying that the guns over, then Lami Tuji guns.
To put it simply, unless we blend our mind with the Dharma, it is pointless merely to adopt the guise of a practitioner. So, the thing is, no matter how much of knowledge and intellectual understanding one might have in terms of the teachings of the Buddha, and if we fail to blend those teachings with our mind with those teachings, then it is just pointless to merely adopt the guise of a practitioner. So even if we have listened to so many teachings, received so many profound teachings and so forth, and if all of those activities have failed to transform our mind, bring some kind of difference and change and transformation for the better in our mind stream, then we become what we call Dhamma resistant. In Tibetan we say Chöde. Chöde is more like somebody who's like knows about knowledge but actually fails to practice it, and then always think like, okay, I know this, I know that, I've received this, I've received that, and so forth. And that actually doesn't bring any inner transformation, doesn't bring any change and transformation on a psychological, emotional level, and that actually kind of prevents us from being a genuine practitioner. And so then what we do is we merely adopt the guise of a practitioner. Restricting ourselves to only basic sustenance and shelter, let us regard everything else as unnecessarily. Of course, in order to survive, we need food, we need basic sustenance, we need shelter and so forth. But not more than that. Let us regard everything else as unnecessarily. And that actually helps us to kind of devote our time, our energy, our effort into the genuine practice of the Dharma. Now when it comes to the practice of Dharma, there are so many things to practice. Like if you talk about the 3 inner tantras, there are Kerim practices, which includes generation stage, visualization of deities, their kind of features and so forth, so elaborate. And then Dzogrim practice, which includes the practice upon channels, winds, and the essential drop and so forth. So kind of complicated, complex, or very intricate details and so forth. And therefore, like leave aside everything and all of this and just practice what we call the Guru Yoga. Guru Yoga, the kind of the main practice in the Ngondo, which actually involves the merging one's mind with the Guru and praying to one's root Guru, who actually must be seen as the Buddha in person, and blending one's mind with the Guru's mind. Pray with single-minded attention and direct all virtuous actions to the benefit of all beings, your very own parents. Whatever virtue one accumulates, dedicate it for the benefit of all beings. Give them for the benefit of all beings without owning it. So therefore, that is what we call the 3 sublimities that Longchenpa pointed out, that at the beginning, whatever virtue we accumulate should be kind of motivated, or the intention of engaging in that virtue should be bodhicitta, where we kind of think of all sentient beings' benefit. And then at the main practice, bringing in the view of non-conceptuality, non-referentiality, or the emptiness, and then finally concluding dedication for the benefit of others. Whatever you encounter, be it happiness or sorrow, good or bad, regard it as the kindness of the Lama. So when we engage in the Dharma, we are bound to doesn't mean that the moment we take the path of Dharma, everything will be rosy and everything will be all right and like that. No, when we practice engage on the path, we will experience all kind of obstacles, manifestation of all kind of evil things like disease and harmful kind of influences and obstacles and obstructions and whatnot. And when we go through that, it is always important to know that this is actually the kindness of one's Lama, that we are able to see these whatever obstacles that we face, we encounter when we embark upon the path of Dharma, that these are just the consequence of what we have done in the past, and that is actually the purification of all those karma, cleansing oneself, purifying oneself of all the negativities. So then take it as the blessing and the kindness of one's Lama, be it happiness, sorrow, good or bad. Rangri Rangshar. Rangri Rangshar Zime Gilonis.
Rangri Rangshar Zime Giloni. Long Nam Medicine, the Nation, Georgia, Long Ripan was Namajavi Ripan with it. Rangri Rangshar Zime Gilona. Machu Zume Waja, Maiva said, no Waja, another words. And then Nodo Koji, Romo Shiva Shini, Tonji Chuni Jurova, Torus. Yuan Yoni said the Tonjedom, Jidis Tamabat Nona, Nodo Shavati, Chiva Mesu, Nodo Koji, Jidit Tama, Nodo, the J10, Nodo Dodson, Nodo Togis Roni, then Toga Mutamiva Cheni, Kwachano. None of the Nodo Shad, told you what Chad, not the Shavi, Zondo Maison, no Shad. Shadon de Mon Yamajaz, Troto, Moshi Tante, Moshi was Sheni. They go chase not only Chuni Juruan, the Hindusan Toruan Troto is. That I was non job, Sadu was a dark going. Major semi, gone to day 7. 7 years, we were all transit years one, Gomzi charge one. That's a jail. Never say it on. So it's on Tamaba Noji, Tunjaji won the Kiji on Madongas. Nazo, Domatic on the Tunjo, the same go and need to know you, Mrs. said they run. They're the Kiji on Madongas. Non-Jova Tetanji, Rodu Sayacho, the Koino, Transhiji, Bayo Goni, Trachik, Semiconi, Tono Kondo, Chamba images, Chavis machine, some image, Shaylas. No, not Travana, Tendu Tulas one, Tonti, Noti Choru, the Kong, Chisha, Tonti John, Gamago, Zomo Drugu, Yama Gamago, Jumano, Jumitajon, Shibis, and them, Juman Monotown. The J. Tonti, Ron Nicati, which we the Sun, Tonti Juman Monotown. Sazo Chibi, that's it, no Chetuna. Padu not drawn to Troto, Padu Padu, you doesn't yawn, Padu not to the Troto is.
In the expanse in which self-knowing Rigpa arises spontaneously, free of all grasping, rest and relax without contrivance or fabrication. Whatever thoughts arise, recognize their essence, allow them all to be liberated as the display of your own intrinsic nature. Now this is talking about the view when thoughts actually arise, instead of commenting on it and chasing it and following it, instead of doing that, try to understand that all of these thoughts, the conceptual thoughts that arise as recognize their essence. Essence is like to know that these thoughts are not substantial, concrete, they come and go. They don't have any independence as such entity. They are not independent entities. They are they arise, they abide, and they cease to be. And therefore, when it comes to the arising of thoughts, conceptual thoughts, then the yogis and the ordinary people who don't practice and those yogis who practice, in terms of arising of thought, they are similar. Thoughts arise, emotions arise in both, whether one is practitioner or not. The difference is that how one responds to those thoughts. Ordinary individuals, when thoughts arise, whatever it is, they chase the thought. They make stories out of it. They cling to it. They grasp upon it. And then it becomes what we call the endless confusion, the endless spiraling of thoughts, one after the another, and therefore we are caught up in that. We are deluded, we become deluded in that process. Whereas for yogis, the moment the thoughts arise, they look into the very nature of the thought, and their thought actually just get liberated in their own essence, liberated as the display of one's own intrinsic nature. And that actually help the yogis actually not to create karma, create a lot of karma because of those thoughts. Without the slightest trace of anything to cultivate or focus upon in meditation. Now when it comes to the ordinary meditation, then there is always an object to be meditated upon, and the subject, the person who is meditating, there is always this the dualism is always there. Now here when we talk about in this particular view, without the slightest trace of anything to cultivate or focus on meditation, don't allow yourself to drift even for a single instant into ordinary confusion. Instead, remain aware and undistracted during all activities, and train to recognize all sights and sounds and sensory experience as the play of illusion. Whatever arises, whatever abides, whatever ceases, all to be a play of illusion. Not clinging to them, not making stories, not judging them or not commenting on them, just let them be, because the moment they arise, the next moment they cease to be, and that is the very nature of the thoughts, always fluctuating, always impermanent, so to say. And therefore, when we train in this way, then in so doing, you will gain the experience of the Bardo state. So here, to gain the experience for Bardo state it means that during the Bardo state, one gets liberated, because we are not caught up in thoughts. We are not caught up in conceptual thoughts. We don't make stories. We are not chase the past, or we don't invite the future into the present. We just let thoughts arise, abide, and cease. We don't comment on that. So therefore, that actually helps us to be liberated in the state of Bardo.
Lama Command took you was those things. Tibet, the long to the tourism, then it's a two drops. Wrong permanent the lake. That's the wrong tree, not so much about any. How to draw to it, to lay crossing. Wrong, so the Rodanica, Tony, not you are. Dejin the two Java, Shushin, content, Tautan, the one that could never was Manjabi, the Japan, Commandon, no one knowing, Shushin. The other moves on Cheton, the one did it about Shedra maybe. That only she was then. To the number good. You want Ye service, yes, I just knowledge is one. The time I go and you to Jamyang Khyentse and Rinpoche, her Guhyagarbha Tantra and Longchenpa was one. And the wrong song in Jamaica, the family trees common. Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, Guhyagarbha Tantra Lama Chötsang.
In short, at all times and in all situations, let whatever you do accord with the sacred Dharma. And dedicate all virtue towards enlightenment. So in all situations, make sure that whatever you do accord with the Dharma, and whatever merit and virtue that you have accumulated, dedicate all of them towards enlightenment. If you do so, you will fulfill the vision of your lamas. The vision of the lamas is the enlightenment, achievement of enlightenment and benefit of beings, and that will be accomplished, that will be fulfilled, and be of service to the teachings. And because of the realization of whatever has been kind of taught here, you know, when we actualize, when we manifest the realization, then definitely it will be the service to the teachings. You will repay the kindness of your parents and spontaneously benefit yourself and others. The repaying the kindness, the best way is to accord with the Dharma, is to practice the Dharma, and in that way one can repay one's kindness to the kindness of one's parents. Please keep this in mind. Even if we were to meet in person, I would have no greater instruction to give you than this. So take it to heart all the time and in any situation. So Longchenpa pointed out that even if we were to meet in person, I don't have anything more special, kind of more profound to kind of share. Then the colophon. Lord of the victorious ones, Longchen Ramjam Sangpo wrote this on the slopes of Kangri Tokar, may virtue abound. So Kangri Tokar happened to be the mountain place, the retreat place where Longchenpa lived for long, and also he composed many of his texts there. And since kind of like maybe one of his students actually kind of like compiled this, or scribed this teaching, and because of that the colophon says Lord of the victorious ones, because Longchenpa would not speak to himself in that way. So it might be out of respect by the student, Lord of the student, that it's written Lord of the victorious ones. Longchen Ramjam Sangpo wrote this on the slopes of Kangri Tokar. May virtue abound. So with this we conclude the explanation on this precious teaching, and if you have any questions, then please ask. Yeah.
Just to repeat, what I understood was that with the four thoughts I enter into motivation, and then go into the good in the middle, where I check pure meditation and action, and then I ensure to have a proper dedication for the benefit of beings. Is that correct?
Danda de Khalsa de Tambasum se Jorala, Mushimikba Meba. The Mushimikba Meba de any Kurangida, Le Gewa, Chawa Gewa Kari Chigi and Dilla. 아니 셈 마행바 치니체나 아니 무슨 버기 메바 고추거기 아무나 따와데 수 소소이 줄에 깨토가 쳐버려서
다 이제 제모스 자자지고 좋아지고 엄마 제모스 대성 또가 뭐 소유나 대 공부 잘 돼.
그래서
되면 다 그런 공부 때 이거 많이 있어야 돼.
그래서 so in the I think you are talking about the three sublimities, right? So preparation should always be kind of bodhicitta, like, you know, bring in the motivation of altruism, of aspiring to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings, and because of that you're engaging virtue, whatever activities it can be doing, prayer, meditation, recitation, whatever activities, right? So that is preceded by action is preceded by motivation of bodhicitta. So that's the first thing, preparation. And the main kind of practice, whatever you are engaging in, suppose you are reading, suppose you are kind of meditating, suppose you are reciting a mantra, then if possible, like if able, then you try to bring in a little bit of understanding and view of either Mahamudra, Dzogpa Chenpo, Great Madhyamika, whatever you know about the view, that is the view of non-referentiality or view of non-conceptuality, you know, non-dual kind of a thing, you know. If you're able, then you bring in that stuff. Now, if you think, no, this is too much because it's kind of again on another plane, isn't it? So then focusing, you know, with full kind of attention in whatever you are doing, whether it's recitation or prostration or whatever activities you are doing, you know, trying to focus on that, that will suffice. And then, of course, dedication is what you mentioned.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche, for the teaching. Thank you so much. You mentioned this meaningless pursuit, namely that in this life, when we pursue the wealth, the reputation, when we die, actually we cannot take it. It's meaningless. But at the same time, you also mentioned that it's also important to, it's also necessary to maintain kind of basic like needs, like food, shelter, and I actually have two questions related to that. The first thing is that nowadays, if we look at the economy, so somehow that whatever we choose, not extreme, but generally whatever we do, whatever generates profit is to bring money, is to create some certainty to the people. And then when we need to maintain the sheltering or the basic for life, somehow we are involving those activities. So then what kind of attitude that when we have to involve into that activities, you suggest that we could maybe maintain or keep in mind? And the second question is that we're still living with the families, with friends, with the circle, and then when we start to recognize this meaningless activity and trying to do meaningful things, maybe like just to maintain kind of basic. However, the friends, the circles, they're choosing different ways. But they care about us. They don't understand that they cannot understand immediately why we choose this way. Then it can create some anxieties or kind of
friction.
So then in these cases, maybe which way we can help them. So to help them not to worry so much about us. So of course they need to. In the end, we each other responsible for our mind. But still, when we see our loved ones that somehow anxious or worried, that because we started to turn to Dharma, to turn to this meaningless, to turn to keep away some kind of meaningless activities. So this is two questions. Thank you so much.
Kong tiwa ni years tiwa tangbo de la tanda karsore ningbo mebe ani jigdengi chasha de ani ta 육체 다 간다 아니 담배치라 좀 그래서 다 디송거로 왔어 다 단다 디낭로래 최소 초와 학교선 소속이 최소 대학이 된다라야 되니 사야 동양 되사 되네 다 비게디 시제 차견돼서 되니 그거 레스라라 다 단대기 디단 대화에 단다 뭐여기 내당라야 아니 단다 점불링이 벤조기 내당도는 삼로당으로지나 안조기 사야 동양 되사다 된조기 당에 셰바지 용알라양 아마도 내가 지 되메스고라 다닝보메벨 내가 망보지를 제거해야 되는데 두고야 그랬어. 얘는 디인디가라 딜라 다 소소 상로 간데듯이 당보래서 저 당보들이죠.
나한테 저기 중고수 맞아.
딱 간다 소소기 최소 초월 학급질라 때내더니 드저 망한데 취 당고래서 이거로 와서 디 최소 초월 학급 가시라 최소 초월 학급디 라이딜라양 아니 닝보 메벨야가 망보지 제고 두고 그래서 아니 근데도 정아서 추바도 중간에 삼로 간데 당고래서
다 랑을 르든 그래서 저번에 되지만 나오자지로
그래서
내가 같이 차도 그 토리던 최지 단선 돈 같이 오면
그래서 so regarding the first question what Khenpo was suggesting is like as practitioners of course like we are humans, we need kind of basic necessities, food, drinks and clothing and of course like bare necessities we definitely need to have, and in order to kind of acquire that definitely we have to work, there's no choice, right? But then, what is important is to know that the limit, if we feel that we have enough to survive, then we don't need to kind of multiply our desires, to kind of to try to think for more in terms of consumption, So then when we minimize that, okay, we come down to our basic necessities, then definitely there will be kind of time, there will be effort, there will be some kind of thing that will be there, spare moment will be there in order to practice Dharma, So that's what is the meaning here. Of course, it doesn't mean that, okay, you leave aside everything and then go in the mountains or, you do not think about your life. Of course, for survival, you have to work. But you have to draw a certain boundary where in terms of what you need, You can't multiply your needs, and then in that, the more you want, the more you need to work. The more you need to work, and the more kind of the time will be consumed, and you won't have time actually to practice, even to sit down, So that's the limit that you need to kind of, as practitioners, you need to focus on. Teni tanda tiwaniba di dirisha ta ngoranzo da cheba jingbe chane ni ta sosogi karso ta jigdengi chasha de kazu tudu nyum tae gi samlo tangge res ni samlo dende gi tangwe gi gyurim nanglo la ya ta sosogi bingya da bodang ta ni korgi ta jizo soso la da ganye yunge tenso gi nami ne bingya ne tenso gi konzo samlo tangda des khagaro was konzo gi ta chedang dende to samlo tang mi ndiwala nganzogi chedang de yang konzogi lola pa ma bab da bodang konzogi da nganzola kangzuni shatsani ta mize di yago yong che de samlo tangge ras o dendeji ka nedang lenge samsam yang soso cheba jimbe chane kangni jinangla chagi dos ni zo dongle hande cheboris
다 저도 좀 최근 가다 마서 저는 또 같이 뭐 텐로스 또 저도
So in terms of like living with the friction, in terms of like conflict of interest, so I think this is the best maybe conflict of interest, because you are interested in the Dharma and you focus more into Dharma, whereas your family, whoever is kind of loving and caring for you, whoever surrounds us, they have a different interest, right? So there will be always conflict of interest, but the important thing is like to make sure that as practitioners we kind of try to accord with Dharma as much as possible, in terms of our interactions, in terms of our way of thinking, in terms of doing. You know, of course, there will be friction because, you know, the value system actually is different, right? And that is the price you need to pay for being a practitioner. And that is for long term. So you have a choice whether you choose your own long-term happiness or your short-term happiness with your having a good relationship with your kind of parents, relatives, loved ones, whatever it may be. So, you know, the choice is yours. So, of course, you have to make an effort to make them understand your own kind of, you know, thought process, your aims, your objectives of doing so, to kind of, you know, adopting such a lifestyle, you know, make them understand. And if, you know, people don't understand, you don't really need to worry too much about it, you know. Sooner or later they will come to know. And even if they don't come to know, but, you know, your own interest is still very much intact there. Yeah.
Can I ask in Tibetan the question?
Yeah, sure. Rikpa ki nyamyong di soso ki kasa sem ki nelu sigura da rikpa di nyam su nyong di soso nyam su nyong tuwe di eni gyu karil deni jungo reese
kabu gyu le na kasa de le se da sona ye kuza sengma jungo sona sawte kuza jungo wa mi gyu le ten jungo sa mi gyu le jodu jawas mi gyu le ten jungo jawas go chui jo
ma kong se di rikpa bigba ma da rikpa sem ki nelu se di sare sem ki nelu di soso ki nyam su nyong la gyu karil sa reese so you need a lot of merit. That's a difficult part.
Can you repeat the question?
I think his question was what kind of what is actually the cause or condition to experience the awareness, the intrinsic awareness, the rikpa, the nature of one's mind. And Khenpo Rinpoche said you need a lot of merit. Actually, the rikpa is awareness, the pristine awareness or intrinsic awareness is something that we all have in our inherent in us. The only thing is we fail to recognize it. And for that recognition, as what Khenpo Rinpoche was pointing out, we need a lot of merit. Maybe you can ask what kind of merit. Sonam rikpa nyam sunyong la sonam sabu res akin gyawa sabu res rala sok sabu res rala. Sok hande sabu res. So from the basic kind of observance of, you know, the basic observance of ethical discipline, like refraining from engaging in non-virtuous action, engaging in virtuous action, all of this kind of amounts to kind of help us to kind of recognize our true nature. So in short, to be being responsible for our actions of body, speech and mind, try to maintain virtue, wholesome action, virtuous action, meritorious action in body, speech and mind. And when that virtue kind of, that accumulation of virtue actually help us to recognize our true nature.
I have a practical question. At the moment when I sit down and try to meditate, my mind is still very
haywire,
wild, and I'm restless. So maybe you can give some advice, or I can just relax and not go after thoughts. It's still I'm doing that. My system is doing that.
Ni tanda gom jidan gom da dewa yo kandi chikshu mora Quran de ta chi samsam ma chi zozo da ji de ne da chi pa tun da ji da chi de sem di pa ze chik to ne gi samro do dang di ga la sem di nam do gi chi balab da ji yo che ngema le ha ba gi de chi nam do bet good do ngen da ji de da ji chona yong dos ji ji ga la 아니 디 간데치니 다 남도도 시와 세고라 되네 간데도지
근데 사람이 그거지 그거 이거 많지 말고 제가 그만해서 거기 제자 간소라 이 바사 시도 요네도 요니온 제 요는 그 가진 관도도 내가 차원에서 가버려
Shantideva pointed out that there's nothing which is impossible if we get trained, if we get used to it, So at the at the onset when you sit down, definitely thoughts will be wild. You will be aware of your thoughts and so forth, and it seems like you can't really control them and so forth. But if you continue to meditate, then you will see the difference. That slowly, you'll get used to kind of having a restful or relaxed mind. So just by a few sittings you can't expect.
Dzongsar Maradu communist concept of Goshu de Redo, the Kazotaji, Condition, Condam is going much, they have shouts. They let Marota.
So our mind can be likened to a wild horse.
Yon Lomi Kashi. 당에 가요 사마르타 유슈 선체 본요 들려 되거든 소나메 고자 되게 되는
So our mind is likened to a wild horse, and what you do with the wild horse, you tie it with the rope, isn't it, just to tame it. In the same way, what is the rope here for this wild restless mind is mindfulness, is Tenpa. Tenpa is to remember, to be mindful of your meditation, right? To be mindful of your mind. And that actually help us. Now, when initially when you start with meditation, definitely it will feel like almost impossible. And that is how our mind is, how it is wild and how it is so much used to being wild and restless. From beginning less time, there is so much of strong habit. I mean, the restless mind has actually has a stronghold in our system, and because of that, it seems impossible, a gigantic task actually to cool and.
Dewa Niva Sona Gabli Hunson Java Shadash. Diva Mega Jenny Penam Muran Tupatoju. Kuma the Samas was Tajedom, Saran Hamando Lee Mega Hunsajam, Java Jajatma, thank you. Carson, they Maji, but the magic Shiva the Chumizas. But then Jungle Maso was a dream you are going to
So, so then slowly with practice, then the restless mind settles down, through practice, where you need to bring in what we call mindfulness and vigilance. And when you focus, then it will help you, reach a state of peace, reach a state of relaxation. Now, sometimes what happens is like when we start to, there are many people who actually start with sitting and then they feel really conscious of this restless mind, and it's how violent the mind is, how talkative the mind is, how restless the mind is, how agitated it is, and then they kind of give up. It's too much, because there's so much of, more than ever they are conscious of their thoughts. Before they don't really know like what is going on in their head, right? And sometimes people give up because of that. It's too overwhelming, and that is the sad part, and that is because of lack of merit. And we have to actually push ourselves and try to kind of train in this, and sometimes to inspire ourselves to think of what actually, what are the benefits of, virtue, what are the demerits of non-virtue, because of what we have been accustomed in the past with so much of bad habit that we are landed here. Because of that, we are kind of confused, we are deluded, we are kind of, because of that. But it doesn't mean that it is not something that can be worked on. It's not something that is impossible. Definitely it is possible, because basically we have this true, peaceful and good nature, which is called Buddha nature, that is within us. So we already have the resource within us. The only thing is we need to recognize it, we need to get inspired, we need to get inspiration, and also to work hard.
I would like to ask the importance of the breathing in the practice in reaching our true nature, and how to master it.
Breathing. Yeah. Tanda di kandishu chik di karesina tanda uk junguk ki nyamne jora uk lateni semte jora digi nyamne di ni keche chongdang dilateni mazogi yang semgi ni luk ngotre toya daw tende daw karsu da chagen daw de yorobes
sa name of the chaji
that's all.
Junu kwai go kema ko sa name of the no unju je chuo za ni sa jun ni ba te chaji te zang jin mo ji music yo ma.
So the breathing exercise, or breathing meditation, focusing on the breath, is really effective in terms of calming down this restless, wild, agitated mind, distracted mind. But once we have achieved that, focused mind, relaxed mind, calm mind, and then the purpose of the breathing meditation, focusing on the breath meditation is served. That's it. So in order to recognize your mind, to gain the special insight into what is the true nature of a mind, you need kind of like the special insight, and that is other than focusing on breath, focusing on the breath meditation. Wow. You start.
May I have a follow-up questions? As in the teaching, that it's also very much highlighted, like to stop the self-grasping and to really be selfless. But the Sexto Rinpoche's answer that it is my choice if I want short-term benefit or the long-term. But then it's coming down to I.
Yeah.
Then if I try to actually practice selfless, and then coming down to I are my choice. So somehow it's not resonated well right now with my limited, diluted mind. So maybe Rinpoche can kindly give some suggestions.
Tamu Jivadi Tangi Karsadi Chojin and Susu Cheba Jindukala, Ani Danga Che di Ani Cheda Tuma, Judingi Chasha di Nyung Tang, Chugi Chasha di Mount Tang, Chugi Chasha la Semte, Wodenichion Dukala. Tini da sosogi nyen nyewa trabu tang soso la gawa tenzugi en konzo samlo tang tang di kaga yin diyo kan da konzo ki samlo mitimba dini yon na yang da zowo di ngarang sosogi da tuen dawu ji kei chegi rese da tar tusu na ten taba da tamji kenpa di kei chegi rese soso rangi o digi samlo di ani di ngarang tarba da tamji kenpa kobang top du se samlo di and the Nanzin Doji, young, so rangi deba doji. Zoden Cheva, the Chagmares.
The Tibetan Buddhism, Tayu Sanji, the Midu, Jimmy Batrasuna, Rosa Yerisuna, the Tibetan Lord, Ledruma, Tibetan Chiva Chagmares.
So, I mean, that is quite simple because, like, when you devote your time into Dharma, more time to Dharma, avoiding worldly activities, the intention is why you are doing it. You are not doing it from the Mahayana perspective, you are not doing it for yourself, just for yourself. You are doing it for all, for the benefit of all. So there is inclusiveness there, which actually really works on your self-grasping. So you have a bigger vision in kind of, just to be clear, you have a bigger vision, not just solely for yourself, So that doesn't contradict. Having a bigger vision works on your self-grasping.
But at the same time, that if your parents or your families don't understand and they get hurt, then everything was caused in the condition, then if I hurt them, even though I believe
so
that...
So who is on the truth? Who is on the side of truth?
Definitely Dharma.
Yeah. So that's quite clear.
Coming back to the question of breathing,
Yeah.
the way it was explained, it sounded for me like shamatha breathing, like you're coming to peace and settling the mind in order to come to vipassana. The question was more for my side now about, in the text I heard about the Sogarim, where you use breathing exercises also for a different purpose. Can Rinpoche just kind of point towards purpose and what could be the first steps to it?
Okay, so that's a little bit different from what he was saying, Tanda kongi jedi yang, tangi ugi keja shesala, tanda di yang kongi yang, manzo zorim gi nyameng gi tanda lung pumjen pumjung lai dawu lung ji zalung tile gi lung ji roa, digi yang nyameng de la tene yang suzo ribang wa tuya di yunguro wasi, yunguro besi, yung chogro besi, rani gi shit.
Dende gita chuba gade tamche dende hone tagi yori.
No so.
No,
so. Yes, there is a way. I mean, what before what we was talking about is breathing, just like focusing on the breath. We are not talking about the whole idea about, the Tsalung practice, where you don't see the body as a normal body, It has its own subtle kind of things, right? With all the visualization, you need to have the view, the right view. And then with that, the mengak, the instruction of how you use your breath, how you use your wind energies to kind of manifest the primary wisdom that is within yourself. So that's a different ball game, I think that's it. Sunam de kamje sepani tone yebe ranam kamje keba na che balon tupai sebe solen doa sho renjen ge solen doa tato tambe chedamide Ranshin Gengyen Doba Tajine Chema Lobe Jiden Zeba Sho Chuse Deyami Dekibo Shoge Tadu Kundo Taju De Lodrö Penor Rinpoche Sanje Tenpa Tashi Keba Shu Chanju Senjo Rinpoche Maje Pana Kagyu Keba Nyamba Meba Yang Kone Kondo Peba Shu Chisi Naka Deba Doa Chisi Negyo Tese Dani Negyo Doe Dume Sewa Shu Kenlo Chuson Rinpoche Zamu Sason Sia Doji Choson Nawada Mede Deson Yele Shu Nanda Rison Lama Chötsang Buddha Yishe Sasan Ninjo Chembe Nyamne La Yeme Tuki Dikle Roji Shu Kewa Kundu Yangda Lama Jeme Chökyi Lodrö Sada Langi Yende Ram Dorje Changi Wanyano Benzo Sarusan.
Thank you so much, Khenchen Rinpoche. I actually did some calculation in my mind. I noticed I'm very old. I'm receiving teachings from Rinpoche since 30 years, actually, and it always has been so profound and vast at the same time. So thank you so much for that.
Kongi Loya Game the Chamber de Temple Major Chasha in Khenpo Tsöndrü Kagyu go Shue go to the Losumju Dosadus. And Kagyu Khenpo Tsöndrü Kagyu Shunaya, and it should be Sabana Gachewa, and it Sabu Gachewe, she in the Kagyu in the same on labels, in the end, the Khenpo Garden Shishus.
Yeah, and thank you so much to visit again Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche Center here and guiding us according to Longchenpa's heart advice.
Today, Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche Choso the Chade in the Khenpo to Tsere on Tet now Garden Shishus, and Longchenpa Shedra Potsashi Shinjue Chongsumus.
Yes, Roman, they will just charge you, Connie. One of them was a true woman, your children. And tell shot, even traveling soldier, Casaba Kachiso Cosin, Sagawas, and Chairman Yes was the soldier.
So Khenpo said he Dzongsar Khyentse happens to be his Vajra brother and sister, Vajra brother, because he shared so many teachings together, like with receiving from Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and very close Vajra friend, Vajra brother. And a lot of respect for what he is doing, what great works he is doing, especially hearing a lot on the social media about like what he is teaching and how he is benefiting so many kind of students around the world. And since you are closely connected, please give him my respect and touch the leg, and pray that he lives long and his wishes fulfilled.
Thank you. That's of course also what all of us wish for Khenchen Rinpoche, to please live long, be healthy, and that your wishes and activities are fulfilled.
Lama Chötsang ni Khenchen Rinpoche Tagarang Mando Kuze Gyansen Tenpa Dang Kusu Trulshik Yongwa Dang Ani Tugi Shedra Rinpoche Tenpa Dang Dure Ten Gyansen Dure Malamis.
And also a big thank you for our wonderful translator. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And then there's one logistical thing. So first of all, thank you guys for coming. But I have to ask you to leave soonish, because we have to transform this entrance area for a lunch into a lunch table situation. So yeah, of course you can offer katak, but then I kindly ask you to leave. Thank you for coming.
That's very skillful.
Very small.
I think we text me, okay? We'll get on that.
Could you stay in the shrine room, maybe?
Sorry?
Could you stay in the shrine room?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then maybe he wants to go to mushroom. That's the chicken.